What up? It's me, Chuck Bailey, here with another episode of Enter the Mindscape, and today I am in my living room. I'm not sure if the last episode was I think the last episode was in the office. I might be doing this way, where I just kind of sit in different parts of my house, maybe different places, and record this little podcast. Talk about different things. Um, that being said, it's been a few weeks since the last episode. Um, Yeah, I kept forgetting to make the episode, but it's fine because now current events and stuff have changed. Um, Personal news and stuff have changed. Like the last thing I said with personal news was like meds. You know, Trying that stuff. I forgot. They're just sitting there. I had to reschedule my appointment with the psychologist because it's like, "Oop, yep, forgot to take those." But in current news, man, the world is on fire. A lot of crazy stuff going on. I had recorded this episode multiple times. Uh, the last, or the first episode, and that was when Charlie Kirk was killed. And, there was a lot of discourse around that, and I didn't really want to talk about that. Now, I mean, there's things like the supposed theory or the supposed, new fact that autism is caused by Tylenol being taken by pregnant women, which is being debated by scientific bodies everywhere. Um, Greta Thunberg and her flotilla that had human aid for Gaza had been captured by Israel, and crazy, inhumane things are happening to them, and it's just a shame that you can't even feed people without the world, or not the world, but war crimes happening. And of course, I guess I might as well just talk about stuff that happened. I recorded an episode of Hanging with the Hooligans with the boys, and we will be announcing on that episode that we're going to be sponsoring the local wrestling promotion, uh, or an event by a local wrestling promotion. Not quite sure how it's happening. I'm pretty sure it's just the event. But yeah, Destination Pro. We'll obviously have more information on that. Another thing that's happened is me and the wife have been talking, and we're really taking steps to work on our health. And I have this garage that I wanted to turn into a gym. And instead of us working on that garage, she had me move the walk pad that's in the garage into or onto our porch. So, because I mean, that's just an already much better space that we don't have to clean out to use for just walking, basic cardio. So it's a good start. When I wake up in the morning, I'm gonna be doing, just doing a morning walk, and she did a walk, 30 minutes. She had her little laptop out there just watching videos, and yeah, so that's going to be our first step for both of us getting healthier. Yeah, and other than that, just been working full time job and everything. Um, yeah. As for the writing, I am that much closer to finishing the crime novel. The last time I worked on it, I was like, man, we're really getting to where the zero draft left off, and where there's a lot of complications and the idea of what I'm gonna do, what I could add to really expand the story and try to make it the best it could be. I kind of, or it's like I have this worry, or not worry. It's like a fork in the road. I could either change things so much that will complicate the edit, but I'll feel better about what the story is, or I could try to make the best of what I have right now, just so I could release it sooner. I think I'm gonna try to do the former, where I make it the best I can. But we'll see. I mean, it's one of those things where no matter what, I know it's gonna be a novella instead of a novel, and you know, like unless I was just skipping things that I had planned for the other books or future entries in the series, I can't really make this story longer, or yeah, without taking from the future thing, which I do kind of want to move on to working in, or editing and drafting other stories. So that's why I'm, not going to spend too much time trying to just make it as long as possible. But yeah, it's coming along. I'm not working on it as much as I'd like to. I would like to be doing um, daily, daily entries, but it's been more closer to like bi-weekly. But yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Mondays in 30 minutes is a new week. I could try to start doing daily entries there. We will see. Um, Other than that, also, there's other stuff that I have writing. Um, I do have like a Wattpad, and I could be drafting on that throughout the week as far as wanting to write other stuff and continue to make progress on other things. So that was something I was supposed to be doing. That is going to be a fantasy, or it is a fantasy. It's called Rictus the Immortal, and that's on Wattpad. So you can read that right now. I have chapters 1 and 2, and I've been working on chapter 3. And I was thinking about it just the other day, like, oh yeah, like I could definitely make some progress on that. I know the stuff I want to do with it. And then I also had what used to be a Kindle Vella story, the remaining few, which uh, I'm basically to the end of that story. But I was like, well, what I could do is expand on what I originally wanted to do and make like multiple books out of, and make it just one book. Um, at least. At least there will still be a series, but the first book will be longer because I'm going to add what I was originally planning for, like book 1 and 2, and make it book 1. So I'll do that. Hopefully, with the addition to that, it will actually result in like something closer to 70,000 to 80,000 words, and then I'll have a novel. So that will be fun. Um, but yeah, I mean those are things that I'm working on. And I mean, even after I'm done with the crime novel, I have a comedic fantasy to edit, and like um, even after drafting those other the fantasy and the science fiction thing, I have another fantasy thing to draft. Like so, I do have a lot to work on. I have a whole list of stuff. It's literally my wallpaper. I see it every time I open up my phone. Reminders like, hey, you got this list of stuff you want to get done this year, and it's not looking like it's going to get done. Um, but I mean, there are some stuff on the list that I can always forget. Weird Worlds, so it was a thing was doing on YouTube. I could literally try to resume that, and I should try to resume that actually. So, I think I left off with like chapter 3 of Weird Worlds, and I have chapter 4 done. It's on my computer. I've had it done for months. I had like a narrating app or whatever, and a subscription that I stopped paying for to save money. I think I might just try to narrate it myself though, and see what kind of like copyright music or whatever I put over it, and see where we go from there as far as that goes. But that's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be my first vampire story. That's apparently it seems like when you're in the world of like writing, that's like a very important thing for like authors. It's like every single author has like a vampire story eventually. But yeah, so I'll be getting to mine soon. It will be in the Weird Worlds Volume 1. And yeah, so gosh, man, that's everything with my writing updates. Um, I don't have any book near me. It was just like last week. It's the remaining, fuck, not the remaining few. In the Shadows of the Forest and the Shattered Legacy Domains Divided book. Book 1. Sorry, Domains Divided, Book 1. So, that's, those, links below. Actually, I should try to see if I even have a link. Because, yeah, I don't think I have those links. They're on Amazon. I will add links eventually. It is a difficult little process where they wanted me to like send my ID or something. But yeah, so that's it for my writing updates. So let's get on with the topic of the day, which was one that is, I feel like it's gonna be a lot easier to talk about than the other one, which was simply me talking about the concept of a story and how important a story was to readers, viewers, listeners, and all that. This is now on a much more uh, specific topic, and that's going to be the comic, or the comic book or superhero genre. So the reason I wanted to talk about that is because I have, I have the ambition to be a comic book writer, I guess, as well as an author. So, and I've always had this interest since I was a kid. In fact, I remember I used to make these like 4 panel comics, kind of like Captain Underpants style, where those kids like made their own comics on like printer paper. I did the same thing, and uh, you know, that's kind of grown into where I plan on starting a franchise where I plan to kickstart it, and I actually have a draft of the pitch on my computer, and that's going to be a lot of fun when I finally get to it. But really, it's crazy when you look at the idea of the comic book or how it's evolved into its own genre, where obviously there's superheroes. The largest part of the genre is the superhero. The costumes, the spandex, or today it's like the tack gear and the leather and all that stuff. But other than that, the genre's really expanded, and it's funny when you look at it because I think in the last episode I talked briefly about the pulp fiction, the pulp novel, and a lot of that stuff talks about like crime and talks about sorry, the crime genre, murder mystery, who stole it, who done it, kind of stuff, and that is really the like core of where the superhero genre starts, because we have the old school like Batman, Detective Comics style thing, where you have you know Batman's just like a detective who's pretty strong and can fight, and he's just solving crimes, and then of course we have like the original iteration of the superhero. As far as I think most people agree, that would be Superman. Clearly. Um, it's funny how that's grown into a very specific and very trope filled and cliche genre almost. Like a lot of people have very specific feelings about how a superhero should act and how a world like that should work and all that. So it's pretty interesting how that's kind of evolved. And, I'm really stoked on the idea of getting into that myself eventually. And I'm actually going to be for sure working with one of the Shattered Legacy artists. Like, it's for sure happening there. Um, at least one of them. And I'd like to expand and, hire other, like, comic artists and stuff in the future, but I am just a guy with a regular fucking full time job. So, oh geez, something popped up in front of my computer. And not just like a random pop up. It was, one of my apps. Uh, so, yeah. Oh, I don't know. Oh no, the video's still going. Okay, cool. I was like, I thought it stopped it. Okay, well, yeah. So, more about the comic genre here. Um, what really interests me. Most people are interested in the superhero genre, which is obviously like, oh, this guy had a science experiment done on him, or, oh, this guy accidentally got hit by a star, or like, oh, this alien, this is an alien, this guy does magic, all those tropes that we know for the comic book hero. But what I really think is interesting is more so the idea of the vigilante. So I've always been more into grounded comic book heroes or stories, rather, because they don't have to be grounded comic book heroes. For example, my favorite Marvel character is Wolverine. Not a very grounded character. He fucking heals from just about anything and has fucking claws that come out of from between his knuckles. Like, that's kind of crazy. But his stories are what's more grounded normally. It's not like, oh, you need to go to space and fight this god. You know, there are some stories that do that, and I feel like a lot of Marvel stories, especially in the modern day, kind of do that, where they're always raising the stakes. So this is a god. This is in somewhere in the multiverse or somewhere someone's lost in time or whatever. I really prefer like the very grounded down story where it could be as simple as uh, you know there's some drama in town. you know, uh, for example, you could just have quite an easy story with the idea of like someone is having relationship trouble or something, and you can't like someone just you can't convince that person to do the right thing to make the relationship work or whatever, or end the relationship. Something simple like that can be a very compelling random comic. Add some stuff to it. Add some action. Add some dialogue. Add other problems. But that is ultimately one of those things. Like people would use that kind of thing as like a subplot in a superhero story, where it's like, okay, you know, maybe Superman's having problems with Lois or something, but in the meanwhile, he's kicking the shit out of Brainiac, and Brainiac's trying to constantly attack Earth. And while he's distracted by, relationship problems with Lois, Brainiac's getting better, and, that causes this and that. That's kind of, I guess, what the thing that interests me more than the Brainiac stuff is like the more grounded things, grounded elements. But I think the other elements or concept I think I really like about grounded heroes is like, even though I'm not saying I'm like the most exotic comic book reader or anything. There was a point where I was buying a lot of comics on my Kindle, and I read like plenty of, you know, DC New 52, random Marvel things, just for Wolverine mostly. And then I also bought plenty of Turok. Turok was a huge one because Turok is actually a very funny example of. Some might debate this. Turok is one of my best examples of a grounded comic book character. Like, despite the fact that you're like, what? It's like a Native American dinosaur hunting, like ass kicking Indian guy or Native American guy. And that's where I have to say, yeah, but like he doesn't usually have like fucking superpowers. Um, they're just fucking, they just got like skills. They're just cool. It's kind of the same thing like, in the Resident Evil series, a lot of like, they're making these new protagonists that can be scared of things. Because if you play someone like Leon Kennedy, despite him not being like a super powered person or anything, he could just kick any fucking threat in the face. And that's just kind of, you know, that's that. You know, you're going to fight the thing. So it's kind of the same thing with like Turok is, uh, you know, can be threatened by just about anything, but is still skilled in stuff to where you know you're going to have a good time. Um, but looking into like the history of comics and stuff has been interesting because there was a point. So there was a point in like the 1920s, 1930s. So sorry, the 1920s is more of the pulp, which like Pulp Fiction kind of has the same concept as a comic book, except they were just straight up stories, you know, short stories. And then they're adapted the idea of like the longer comic strips getting longer and longer and becoming a whole full on comic book. And the comic book typically had the like would have the same genres but different. So you would have your crime novel, your crime comics, you know. That's where, like I said, again, Batman crime comic, not originally like a superhero comic, you know. It was just I mean, superhero in the concept where he like dressed up cool. But like, you know, then there's the idea that at some point people were getting tired of superhero stories, so they're getting into westerns, and that's where like the character Jonah Hex gets popular from. But I think that's funny because like you could really, I think, what's the word? Dissect what people like about westerns, other than like the period piece, like, or if you attempt to shift a period piece, you know, it's like you kind of want this story about like a almost like a lawless land or a small law, like a, you know, small settlement. You know, for me, I always think of like what I like about Fallout or what I like about Mad Max. Very well goes in line with what is cool about westerns, which is why I think westerns don't have to just be, you know, westerns aren't just like about cowboys per se. It's weird because I feel like in a weird way, if you really dissect it, you could say like Mad Max is a western of its own type, you know. But and even though it's a movie, not a comic, so getting back to it, yeah, very strange to find out there was a whole phase back in the day where people were getting tired of superhero comics, started getting into westerns, and then Spider-Man came along and restarted uh, the superhero craze, which you know I do get it. It's kind of a cooler. I mean, yeah, Spider-Man's a cooler like design for a superhero than like Superman, Batman, or a lot of the Marvel guys, or you know, a lot of the public domain guys. I actually will be probably throwing in some images here and there as I'm talking to like spice up what I got going on. But I was actually looking, you know, for comic book characters and stuff when I was going to talk about this stuff, and I'll probably be throwing up some images. But it's really interesting how you have like what's today public domain uh, superheroes because like their creator died obviously, and they're not like there's so many superheroes back in the day because there was this huge craze, you know, like a gold rush of people trying to come up with, you know, their own Incredible Hulk or their own Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel. So one I found though that's public domain that's a pretty cool character though is called the Black Terror, which is just a dude in like a Jolly Roger, like a black spandex with a Jolly Roger insignia. Pretty cool. And apparently his backstory is just like he messed with chemicals and got superpowers. All right, real. Yeah, we've heard that before. This sounds like basically he's a Powerpuff Girl, but uh, yeah, still a cool concept. I do want to use that character eventually in a idea I have for a franchise that different comic franchise or same different universe in a comic franchise. I'll get on that eventually, or maybe this is the episode. Actually, yeah, this is the episode. I'll tell you guys about it. So, more about the public domain thing. Um, every year since we're in 2020, or we're in the 2020s rather, um, we're getting things from close to 100 years ago thrown into the public domain to some extent. So recently there was like Mickey Mouse, huge one, but it was like Mickey Mouse as far as like Steamboat Willie style, and people were finding their own ways to, like, of course, horror movies jump on that shit right away. So like Winnie the Pooh hit public domain. There's a Winnie the Pooh horror movie. Uh, you know, Steamboat Willie hits the public domain. There is a Mickey Mouse horror movie now. And another one, legendary public domain character now. Popeye the Sailor Man hits public domain. So now there's a Popeye fucking uh, horror movie, which I did not watch that. I didn't watch any of those, but I see like every time someone hits public domain, apparently it's like horror movie writers, directors, they're like, oh yeah, we gotta do that. So, other than that, though, it's like you can take this character and put them in your own stories or make your own stories with these characters so long as they don't embody, like, say, for example, Mickey Mouse can't be like the Disney Mickey Mouse, which is kind of a hard one for me to tiptoe, but basically not the modern Mickey Mouse. Um, the version that Popeye, the version that hit the public domain of Popeye, is not the same version right now that has like the big buff the nemesis Bluto, and he's not like the spinach eating and then getting a stronger one. He's just a tough sailor right now. That is the version that got released into the public domain so far. As years go on, more of the stories become public domain, so more of those elements become public domain. But some of it isn't. Like, some of the stuff is copyrighted based on who created the stuff. For example, um, H.P. Lovecraft is a huge one because I think he always was letting his stuff. So Cthulhu is always public domain. Nyarlarlo, tip, whatever, Dagoth, all those ones that are like original H.P. Lovecraft originals have always been in the public domain. But there are other eldritch beings, the other elder gods that were created by other people who wrote their own things in the Lovecraft mythos that they belong to them under their copyright, so they're not available through the public domain. So you can write stories with the other people that I mentioned, the H.P. Lovecraft stuff, but you cannot do it with this stuff written by by the other authors. Same thing with you like the more you learn about public domain, you're like, oh yeah, that's why I see fucking Sherlock Holmes and everything. Dracula, uh, Frankenstein, all these characters because they're like fucking like 200-year-old characters, almost 100-year-old characters, all sorts of stuff like that. So basically, now getting back to the point, we're getting to a point where these comic book characters that we grew up reading and watching in cartoons and stuff like that were made like almost 100 years ago, or yeah, almost 100 years ago, like Superman, Batman, stuff like that, is going to be hitting the public domain. So a lot of that stuff, it's going to hit the public domain in 10 years. So I have the idea of a specific setting where I wanted to put a lot of those superheroes that are becoming public domain in that setting. And I wanted to lightly prepare for it, but not actually put anything in that setting yet. because I wanted to be able to introduce all these characters, which I can't do right now because they're not public domain. So, just letting you know, yeah, I'm gonna definitely be writing my own Batman story, my own Superman story, stuff like that. But it's gonna be when it hits the public domain. Another character I've been really excited about hitting the public domain, which I think is in another, also in 10 years. Let me double check. I'm gonna check right now. We're gonna check it live. But it's Conan the Barbarian, a pulp legend, written by Rob E. Howard, I believe is his name. Rob Howard is his name for sure. Um, uh, yeah, that character is going to be hitting the public domain, but not super soon. It's gonna do it in, let's see. Oh, 2028. So it's coming up. It is coming up. Robert E. Howard, you know, he's coming up. But the problem is, uh, that's going to be like the earliest iterations of Conan, which means like a lot of people will probably have like modern, Conan from Marvel, Conan from the 80s movies, or Conan from like modern iterations that they've seen with like video games and stuff. Me, what I like to do when I learned about the whole idea of public domain is I get the original work, like I have a lot of H.P. Lovecraft books that I read, and it's like, all right, so let me get my idea of the Cthulhu mythos, and then I'm like, all right, this is it. I don't worry about those other writers or the other guys' stuff. This is just like that setting, and now I can do my own public domain story based on this iteration of the property. So that's basically the idea of what I wanted to do with Conan and what I wanted to do with the uh, other characters. This has kind of become more about public domain than it has about comic book characters. So, um, I think I'm going to go back and we'll go back to the comic book characters here. So, yeah, obviously, I should just say right away. I should have said this at the beginning of the topic. Favorite comic book characters. DC, like my favorite series is obviously Batman, but my favorite character is the Red Hood. And that's because he has well, first of all, cool anti-hero. Um, kills criminals and has like a moral compass that is like a little more modern or more tangible to the world, or to not to the world, to Gotham, and our how I think the modern audience sees things than Batman. But then again, I think a lot of people would disagree because there's obviously an extent where it's like, a lot of people don't agree with like the death penalty for one, or not everyone deserves their day in court type things. But I'm not talking about actual politics. I'm talking about Gotham and the comic setting, Gotham. So calm down. You could like Red Hood because Gotham is fucking crime ridden. There's fucking terrorism constantly happening there every night, and only one guy is basically throwing the same people into institutions again and again, and they just keep breaking out. If that constantly happens in your world, and that also results in the death of your side, or this guy's sidekick, Batman's sidekick, Jason Todd Robin, then that guy gets resurrected and decides to start killing people like he did as the Red Hood, um, at least at first. I think that's a really cool addition to the story of Batman and the mythology of Batman, especially as long as Batman is the Batman does not kill kind of Batman. it makes for Red Hood, the Jason Todd, I'm gonna kill. I'm gonna be the killing Batman, basically. Um, or, the killing superhero. It does make that very. It makes it more interesting because there's a really good duality there. Yeah, that guy gets fucked over. I mean, apparently there was a new comic that was written. I forget her name. I should probably look it up. Maybe I'll pop it up on the screen. The comic book writer's name. And apparently she lost her series because she made comments about Charlie Kirk, which is fucking ridiculous. Like, uh, we should have free speech, but whatever. Um, yeah. So Red Hood got shafted. I already said my favorite Marvel superhero is Wolverine. I don't even think there's but there's a future version of him I like better. Nope. Wolverine I like better. I'm like X-23, or I think his name's Daken, his son. I don't know future version of the character. I just like Wolverine. That's my favorite Marvel character. Um, Outside of the basics of Marvel and DC, like I said, Turok's probably my favorite comic book character that is an outside DC thing. But then again, I also like I think it's 2000 AD comics, like Judge Dredd, sick. I fucking love that like setting, like scorched earth, and you know, good like fascist character of like it's one of those dystopian settings, and I'm gonna admit I haven't read like too many of those comics at all, but I've seen more movies than I've read the Judge Dredd comics. But I've still seen and read some Judge Dredd comics. One series that I really like that I've not read any comics of except for one is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Grew up watching those cartoons, and I read The Last Ronin, which I really love the fact that that's Michelangelo. That's my favorite Ninja Turtle. And the fact that he turns into The Last Ronin is fucking cool. Pretty sick. And I hope they keep to that when that movie comes out. I think they're supposed to be doing a movie. Or a video game. I think it's a video game, actually. Either way, hopefully they keep to it that it is fucking Michelangelo, not anyone else. God, what other comics? I always wanted to read Transformers. It's that's the crazy thing about like these there's comics that came out in like 2004, and it's like I was in fourth grade, dude. I'm not gonna be able to find uh moving my laptop. I'm not gonna be able to find the Transformers 2004 comic run. I think the series was called Armada. I don't know, because I think it was based on the cartoon that was running too. I don't know. I hope it was, because that's the iteration I like of that's where they have like instead of Bumblebee, it's a Hot Shot. So I'll say right now, if you disagree with me, put it in the comments. But Hot Shot over Bumblebee for sure. Cooler character. I love when he like evolved and fucking got like the red car, you know, got the red car, became a red car rather than being the yellow car. But yeah, still sick. I mean, if they're gonna keep making Transformers movies, I hope they eventually make Hot Shot, because Hot Shot's fucking dope. Anyways, so I believe I've yapped enough about comics. Hopefully, you guys got my point across. I do want to do a comic book, not only a comic book series, but a comic book franchise, and maybe I'll get more into that in the future. I just didn't want to spill. I didn't want to spill any like details of that stuff until I know, like, hey, I'm gonna do this now, because otherwise, like, hey, you know, this might be done. But just to give it away before we end this topic, they're going to be a lot more grounded. Like there will be some sorcery, maybe some occult magic, very grounded, earthly magic, but it will mostly be very grounded. not superheroes, but vigilantes. And not only does this make sense to tell you guys this because I'm talking about comics, this makes sense because this is the same setting that the books that the one book I've put out so far, In the Shadows of the Forest, and the book I'm working on right now, the crime novel, both are in the same setting as what I want to start this comic franchise in. So it's pretty grounded. There's not going to be this, like, oh, superheroes shooting fucking laser beams out their eyes kind of thing. But if you've read In the Shadows of the Forest, there could be some fucked up stuff. Some stuff that you wouldn't. Stuff that you could probably say exists in the real world tangibly. That's the way I like to play with, like, things that are a little beyond our reality. It's like, well, you can't really say, like Bigfoot isn't real kind of thing. But anyways, that's it for that topic. I've already mentioned my other books. Please check them out. Please give me a like or subscribe. Put in the comments who your favorite superhero is. And like I said, if you don't agree with me that Hotshot is better than Bumblebee, let's talk about it, because I don't know how many people even fucking know who Hotshot is, but let me tell you how fucking annoying it is that Michael Bay literally, like, Hotshot was the fucking prevalent character in the goddamn fucking series, like the Transformers comic or uh, cartoons. It was Hotshot, not Bumblebee. Then fucking this Michael Bay guy puts out his stupid fucking Transformers movies, and suddenly Hotshot's nowhere to fucking be seen anymore, and it's fucking Bumblebee all the time. So that's why I'm saying this. Like, if you guys want to, like, post up and tell me that Bumblebee's fucking better than Hotshot, come say it in the fucking comments. But otherwise, fuck you, Michael Bay. I want some fucking Hotshot back, as well as the people who fuck Hasbro, whoever the fuck's making the cartoons, bring Hotshot back. Alright. Thanks for listening. This has been Enter the Mindscape with Chuck Bailey. And, oh, by the way, they don't need a plug, but I've listened to there's another podcast called Mindscape, which is a lot more, like, intelligent than mine. It talks about really cool stuff. It's just called Mindscape with, I don't know, some fucking professor or something. Check that out. Like, seriously, it's really interesting. Alright, see ya.